Welcome to Political Chaos, a political murder mystery, where you, the listener, become the detective. Figure out who the killer is. Get to know and learn each character. Help choose the course of the story and their fate. Who knows? It might be you who is the killer. Written by Rylan Mason and narrated by me, Brian Shepard. Episode 2. Welcome to Washinton. Bryce was quickly escorted back to the house, as Tony had instructed Marco that under no circumstances was Bryce to drive home. Tony was sure the Secret Service wouldn't have allowed it, regardless. Back at the house, and after a seemingly quiet ride, Bryce was met with the rest of the protective detail, which looked like a small army compared to the 2 to 3 he was used to when Tony was governor. 3 blacked-out Ford Expeditions flanked the grounds, one at the gate when they pulled in, another set at the front of the house, while the last one was off by the garage. Men scattered throughout the back gardens and pool area, all the way to the front, and even on top of the roof. So no one was getting through. "Sir, you'll have about 30 minutes or so. We have a flight to catch," Marco said, as he pulled in behind the waiting Secret Service vehicle. As technically, he told Tony he was already on the plane. He wanted to see the house one last time. "Well, we figured it would happen, so it's a good thing that we settled everything in the house and packed it just in case," Bryce stated, as he attempted to open his door. That's when Marco grabbed Bryce by the arm. Startled, Bryce looked at Marco with confusion. "You can't just open the door and jump out anymore," Marco began. "You need to wait for me to get out, giving the clear for you. Things work differently now," Marco finished, as one of the agents approached, waiting for Marco to get out. The agent must have seen the door was ajar, because Bryce noticed him quickly closing it, only to open it as soon as Marco came around the back. He knew that once he walked through the front door, the clock would be ticking. 30 minutes to grab his suitcases from upstairs. 30 minutes to remember all the memories here where they called home for the last 8 years on and off. It's not like the house wouldn't be here when they were finished with Washinton. However, just thinking about it as he scanned all the pictures that lined the staircase leading upstairs, just how long would it be? Now that Tony was in, would he ever leave? Number 1 Observatory Circle may be a grander house, but nothing compares to home. Again, Bryce was smart to pack everything they would need. Everything in suitcases in the closet made it easy to just grab and go. However, the staff must have already picked up said items, along with other boxes throughout the house, as when Bryce opened the closet door, they were gone. So in the end, Bryce didn't have to lift a finger. One more sweep of the inside of the house with his ocean blue eyes had him slowly walking back down the stairs, and he was remembering all the good days here. Which, when Tony was governor, they lived in the governor's home, and only came home when they wanted to escape. So in a way, Bryce was used to not being here all the time, and it's most likely the reason behind him being at ease with the move in the first place. Yet Bryce knew there would be no escaping to the mountains. There would be no strolling around town at night, which usually only consisted of both of them ending up at the market basket to simply buy fixings for a steak dinner. Walking the trails on the weekends was also not going to happen. He could just see the Secret Service swarming the park, causing a spectacle along with the media asking questions as to why they decided this park to walk, or other ridiculous questions. "If you're all set, sir, the car is waiting to take us to the airfield. Your belongings have already been picked up," and we'll be waiting for you at the residence." "I figured you would have known that," Dante said as he came in the front door. "I'll be honest, Dante. This all seems too good to be true, and all too quick. I'm scared. Yet I'm not sure if it's just nerves or... Oh well, yes, I'm ready," Bryce finished. Maybe it was just all in his head, and that he shouldn't worry. Into the waiting SUV, down the driveway, and leaving Dublin behind. For now, he kept thinking, as the 3 black vehicles made their way down Main Street and en route for Jaffrey Airport, where his ride to Washington would be waiting. Which, he was right. Sitting on the tarmac amongst smaller, single-engine planes was Marine 2. Marine 1 is referred to as Marine 2 when the vice president is on board and traveling. Is Tony inside? Bryce thought, as he picked up his feet and climbed the steps inside, only to reveal someone else. Someone he has not seen since Tony was in office. "Victoria?" Bryce said in confusion. "What on earth are you doing here?" he asked as he took a seat next to her, while Dante and Marco also took their seats. "Nice to see you, too. He asked me if I would come out here and pick you up," she answered with a laugh. "This is the best ride I could come up with, where I don't have to do the driving. That, and it would be so much faster." Victoria beamed, as the plane was ready to leave, and had finally begun to ascend up and into the sky, and head into the direction of Andrews Air Force Base. Victoria Stephanos had been Tony's aide while he was governor, and had been asked to take the role of his chief of staff, as Ecker's chief of staff did not want to stay on, and resigned. In fact, he was not the only one who left. However, since bringing in Victoria on, she has been fast at replacing aides and critical staff. "Well, it is refreshing to know it's you, and not just Marco and Dante I'm flying with. They don't like flying," Bryce joked, as they both just squinted their eyes, while trying not to look out the window. On the flight down, Victoria had laid everything out for him and what to expect when they landed at Andrews Air Force Base, where he would then be escorted to the White House, where he would then meet his staff, the rest of his security detail, then be fitted for the dinner that he and Tony were invited to by the President and First Lady. "When do I see Tony?" was his first question. Forget everything else. He wanted to see Tony, as it had been some time. "Before the dinner. Don't worry, you'll see him," she answered. The flight didn't take that long, and before he knew it, they were landing at the base, in front of a hangar, which Bryce thought that he would just be simply dropped off on the south lawn, bringing him just yards from the door. Nope. 5 running SUVs and a limo, along with the local PD, were there to escort him to the White House. "Off we go. Remember what we talked about. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me," she said, as Marco and Dante exited the plane first, followed by Bryce and Victoria. They would take the same route as if the president was on his way to the big house, as the agents called it, to avoid the mid-afternoon traffic. It was the job of the local police to block off side roads as the motorcade drove on. Bryce tried not to look at the drivers as they passed, as a few didn't seem too pleased with being held up in traffic, which didn't take that long, as they were already pulling up to the gate, which opened immediately, allowing all to pass right through and up to the north side of the building, where he was then escorted through the cross hallway and then to wait in the Red Room, which was located on the state floor. The Red Room served as the president's antechamber for the president's office and cabinet room next door. During the James Madison administration, the room became First Lady Dolly Madison's famous saloon. A sunflower yellow, not red, dominated the room's decor. Visitors were received at her famous Wednesday night receptions in the blazing splendor of this room. The Red Room traditionally has served as a parlor or sitting room. Recent presidents have even had small dinner parties in here. Madison's style of entertaining came to an abrupt end on August 24th, 1814, just after the British invaded Washington and burned the mansion. This room has been through so many transformations, and even history was made in this very room. On March 3rd, 1877, the Red Room was the scene for the historic swearing-in of President-elect Rutherford B. Hayes. Political tensions ran high after his bitterly contested election over Samuel J. Tilden, so Hayes secretly took the oath of office at the White House. Inauguration Day fell on a Sunday that year, and this swearing-in avoided a 24-hour delay in the transfer of power and any perceived danger of a coup. President Ulysses Grant slipped away from a dinner party in the next room to attend the ceremony. Hayes took the oath again in public on March 5th on the east front of the Capitol without incident. And now, Bryce was sitting in the very room where the First Lady is always seen on TV, receiving guests to the White House. Is that what this is? Is he waiting for Rachel? The furnishings looked just as wonderful as they did on TV. Red and gold fabric covered each chair and couch, which matched beautifully with the gold frames which hung against the oak wood paneling. In them portrayed past First Ladies, magnificent landscapes, and even a few past presidents. Each first family has the option of changing the decor and use of the rooms inside the White House if they so choose to. Rachel Fairbanks decided to restore the room back when American Empire-style furnishings were used. The White House Association was thrilled with this idea and made it happen. Bryce would only be able to sit for so long, as his patience only ran so deep. If he wasn't at the White House, he would have exploded by now. However, before all that happened, he would focus on a tour group, which would soon be invading the Red Room as it's part of the tour. Hopefully, Tony will show up soon. This is the East Room. It is the largest of the staterooms in the White House. The East Room was designed by James Houghton and George Washington to be a public audience room. Second President John Adams and First Lady Abigail Adams were the first couple to live in the executive mansion, as they used the huge unfinished room for hanging out their laundry. Some in the group were amazed by that fact. Others chuckled at the fact of picturing clothing lines strung across the huge room. The tour guide continued to explain more, as they were now just down the hall and would be heading this way, it would seem. As Bryce continued to sit on one of the chairs by the white marble fireplace that he so desperately wanted to take and install it in Dublin, the tour group was now entering the green room. Each state room was connected to each other, so they would be walking through the blue room to eventually reach the green room. Bryce was getting a little concerned at this point, as the group would be entering his location at any minute now, as now they have reached the blue room. He could hear the tour guide explaining fun fact that the room houses the official White House Christmas tree, as the room, when decorated for the holidays, is used to receive distinguished guests. Did the Secret Service not care that in about 10 seconds, 15 people or so would be in Bryce's company? Normally, that's something that does not happen. And this is the Red Room, the young woman said as they all started to pile in the room to observe everything that Bryce had just done. So far, no one really noticed him standing there, so he just decided to stand in the back. Maybe this way no one would notice or recognize him. First Lady Dolly Madison turned this room into a salon and had paint color sunflower yellow until the house was burned by the British in 1814. President Madison would move into the restored home in 1818. That was the wrong year, Bryce thought to himself, as he noticed that she did not correct herself, nor did anyone else. I'm sorry to interrupt you. However, I think you meant to say the year 1817, Bryce blurted out, only because he knew almost everything about the White House. Growing up, he had always dreamt of living in it. So, if you're going to give a tour of the people's house, you should know your history. He wanted to make it seem like she had made a simple, honest slip-up, giving her the opportunity to fix it. My apologies. You are correct. President Madison moved in 1817. With so much history here at the White House, sometimes you can get dates mixed up, she said, with a smile on her face, yet still looked confused, like her brain was trying to piece something together, other than the countless dates that she would have said wrong. His correction got some attention from those close to him. They were now looking at him as if they knew him from somewheres and haven't placed him yet. Just like Janet, the tour guide, who was now raising her hand to cover the "oh" her mouth was doing, as she figured it out. Just as Janet, the tour guide, was about to say something, a voice rang out behind her. My, what a beautiful-looking group we have here today. I do hope you're all enjoying yourselves here today, First Lady Fairbanks said as she stepped into the room, looking ever so regal in a stunning, simple navy blue dress. Her fiery red hair hung down about halfway down her back, high heels to match. Is it just him, or do all gingers look good in blue? There was shock and awe as those in the tour group had the same "oh" expression that Janet had. While some could not believe that the First Lady was here in the Red Room among them, others were looking past her towards the door to see if the president was next. Bryce? Rachel said. She walked through the crowd over to him, extending her hand, while she smiled and took, shaking for a few seconds. Welcome to the White House. I apologize, as it seems our husbands are preoccupied at the moment, so I thought I would meet you and take you over to the family dining room, where we can chat for a while we wait. Even Bryce was a little stunned at this and almost felt like some in the room, starstruck. Even though he knew Rachel outside of politics, this was different. She was the First Lady. Oh, absolutely. Thank you. It's a pleasure to see you, Bryce said, as they all then turned to leave and noticed everyone just watching and listened to this exchange happen before them. Now, to head across the hall to the family dining room with the First Lady, to chat. This should be interesting.